The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and across the moat from Oakland. I'm here today with one of my buds. He is a part of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network team, as it were, Fred Walin. Welcome, Fred. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. Last night I went to something that I will never forget. Fred Clare, former Dodger, and folks, this is a sports-oriented show as well as political. Fred Clare, former Dodger general manager, who I knew pretty well, of course, last year was diagnosed with cancer, and the City of Hope here in Southern California saved his life. So a couple of months ago on my Sports Byline show on Friday night, I had Fred on, and so he said, why don't you come down to a great evening, which was Monday night, the 20th of August, at a golf course in Glendale, California, and it's going to be a celebration of life, and Tommy Lasorda will be celebrated, 91 years of age, and I'll get up there, me and Fred Clare will get up there and speak, and we'll talk about the City of Hope, and so wife Sandy and I drove the mileage, and believe me, Southern California, where we lived there, is a long way, but it was worth it. It was an exciting night. We saw some people we hadn't seen in years, and we saw Fred Clare make his speech, and he beat cancer. He beat a very tough kind of cancer. So let me tell you something, folks. You know, he began with skin cancer, and then when he went on the Sports Byline show, you know, he says a lot of people, you know, forget to put lip cream on, you know, with sun protection. And I've had two kinds of cancer myself. So when I go outside here in Los Angeles, I cover up totally. If it's 90 degrees, I've got a light jacket on to cover my arms because I've had basal cell and squamous cell cancer. So anyways, the point is, but up until that night when he was on our show, Ralph, I never thought about lip cream. Since that day, or the next morning, when I went to Trader Joe's, my wife and I, and we each bought, well, Sandy had already used lip cream. I started using lip cream every day. And if you're listening out there on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, think about it, folks. When you think of skin cancer, many people, Ralph, just think, oh, just skin cancer. It's not just skin cancer. If you don't catch it, it can kill you. And thousands die every year of skin cancer. Places like the City of Hope keep you alive. So you can still, you know what you can do? You go to fredclaregolf.com, fredclaregolf.com, if you'd like to donate to the great cause. And it's quite an evening on Monday night here in Southern California for yours truly.
Yeah. Hey, Fred, I think we're joined by Tom Simon.
Yeah, I think
correct?
So. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry for being late, but I couldn't find the code number to get in. So I've been searching for it for the last few minutes. I see you've been trying to get hold of me. But,
okay, well, I'm glad you're here, and let's turn this into one of your famous debates. I call it good versus evil. And you've done this now on our network for the past couple of months, and it is as interesting a show as we've had, interesting a segment as we've had, and it's a good, clean debate. You know what my feelings are, and I'm going to leave it to you. Let's start, Tom. As we do with you, you can set the tone of what you're going to talk about this evening, and I'll turn it over to you, Tom Simon. You will get to talk to Fred Walin. So go at it, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Ralph. And Fred, my apologies for not joining you late, especially on an important day like today. So much going on. It's surprising that just in the 20, 30 minutes that I've been trying to get a hold of you, that there hasn't been more news that has crossed the wires. But the news so far today has got to keep people chatting for the next 48 hours for sure and longer. The question I have is, at this point, with this kind of, first of all, Trump, as I've told you before, Fred, probably knew that Michael Cohen was going to turn on it, but I don't think he woke up this morning thinking anything like the day would be this way. I don't think he woke up this morning thinking today's the day Manafort gets found guilty of 8 counts in federal court, but today's the day Michael Cohen pleads guilty, and I'm in big trouble. And he is in big trouble.
But he landed in West Virginia half hour ago, and he blamed everybody else except himself. And as we all remember, when he was running, how many times did he say, I only hire good people. I hire the best people. They're always very intelligent. Yeah, well, how many of his people have resigned, and how many have been found to be guilty of crimes and things like that? He's only hired the best people, and the topper would be. Now, I don't know. I don't think she will, because I think she wants the screen all to herself. But in a couple of days, if Omarosa would drop another bomb, I think I would laugh. Not that it matters, folks, because I think Tom and I both think that, I certainly believe this guy will never resign. So, and part of the problem is that no Republican senator will have the guts to tell him to resign. So he won't, even if they did, he wouldn't resign because he thinks he can win at all costs because he was born with a silver spoon. He's been fined by the state of New York for not renting to blacks or Hispanics, but never went to jail. And, he's always able to talk his way out because he's got money. So I don't think he'll ever resign. And I was telling Ralph before you came on, Tom, that I firmly believe, I said this, in our previous show on Trending Topics News Radio on Facebook every day at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock in the East, that I firmly believe he'll start a war before he would step aside.
Well, you have to look at what he's facing now and where he's at. And I believe he's in the same position that Nixon was in just before he resigned right now. He's got to have somebody come into him, and that person may be his daughter, and she's got to come in and say, look, Dad, this is something we can't turn around. Now we have to do the best we can to mitigate the damages. How can he mitigate the damages? He can go to Mueller and arrange for a resignation and get out of Dodge. No country, no statesman in this world, no matter how much you dislike the president, wants to see a president impeached if you can avoid it. I believe both the Republicans and the Democrats would go for a stepping down in exchange for no impeachment and no criminal charges. If he doesn't do that, what's likely to happen, as I've outlined before, is that he's going to finish out his term as president in his first term. He will not win the second term under these conditions. And then after he leaves office, he can be charged. Important that we recognize and we say, Fred, that Robert Mueller has said on the record that he does not believe a special counsel can charge or indict a sitting president. So he is not likely, no matter what the evidence is, no matter whether there's a co-conspirator or not in the president, he is not likely to charge the president while he's sitting in office.
I think that in a couple of weeks, starting next week, maybe starting later this week, he'll start pushing the Kavanaugh thing, trying to distract us. I think that'll be the next step. If that doesn't work, he'll start a war. Again, I don't know if all the legal experts agree that the sitting president can't be charged. You could be right, and it could be the case. But I think it's irrelevant because he's going to prove that he's never wrong. And if that means getting people killed, people will be killed. And it's interesting now to see if any of the Republican senators turn on them, even in voting no for Kavanaugh, just on that principle. And I don't see many doing that because I haven't seen testicles. Not that I want to see testicles, but I do philosophically see. I would love to see testicles from one or two Republican senators who are actually running for re-election. I mean, I don't care if Jeff Flake says something because he's got nothing to lose. Bob Corker's got nothing to lose. They're not rerunning. They're not running again. But I would like to see something from somebody who actually is running, or even not in this term, running in 2 years or so, or 4 years if you're a senator. I'd like to see one of those guys actually walk up to him and say, no, you've gone too far now. You must resign. Goldwater did that to Nixon. And Nixon soon, the next day, said, okay, I'll resign at 12 noon and all this. And that happened in August of 74. And that's, 16 and 18, 34 years ago. And again, I say Nixon is much brighter. And Nixon came from a different background, pretty poor in Whittier, California. He didn't have a silver spoon. And he was much brighter. And he was a lunatic, but not in the same. This is totally out of the norm as far as Trump. I mean, this isn't, like if you were talking in Bellevue, State Mental Hospital in New York, there's groups. And, I mean, you'd have to get a special room for this guy, Trump. I mean, the rest of them could be crazy, but there's nothing like this guy. And so and I'm not trying to be funny, I firmly believe that. The man is he's bananas. And, but because he's bananas, I am frightened he's going to get kids killed and people killed because he doesn't care about anything except himself.
Trending Topics News Radio Live. This is the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Tom Simon in Williston, North Dakota today. Fred Walin is in Westlake Village, California. Talking to you folks about the big story of the day, the twofold story. One, Paul Manafort found guilty on 8 charges, including bank fraud, 2 charges there, and 5 tax fraud charges. The bank fraud charges are the most serious charges. There were a total of 8 bank fraud charges, Fred. He was only found guilty of 2 of those. It would have been just extremely devastating had he been found guilty on all of them, because then the judge could stack those up and give him lots and lots of time. Fred, I wanted just to mention the fact that the person that said that a sitting president could not be indicted or charged is Robert Mueller. He has said that on the record. And he's the only one that counts in this case, because there's nobody else that would charge him but Robert Mueller.
If somebody walked up to him with a legal case, he could change his mind. I would say.
No. He has made it clear that he believes the Constitution protects the president from being charged. He believes that. Nobody's going to be able to make a case to Robert Mueller differently than that.
What he believes is fine, but the Constitution is a moving document. If somebody could show him that it is a moving document, and in this case it's different because the man was elected based on the collusion, he might change his mind. He might not. I don't know. But there's also simultaneously state crimes that he's been charged with in New York, which he can't be pardoned, and he can't pardon anybody like his son Eric, and he could be convicted there. And there are other circumstances. And again, even in the Cohen thing, he is called a unindicted co-conspirator. Because you can't, in a federal case, I talked to my brother right before he came on. If you're if you have not been charged in a federal crime, they can't mention your name. But Donald Trump is the unindicted co-conspirator in the Michael Cohen cases. So when Michael Cohen was paying off the women, the co-conspirator is Donald Trump. They had to say a candidate. Well, because that's the law says you can't mention his name, but that's Donald Trump. So I don't think it's quite.
That's what you think it is. It could be. It could be any number. It could be any number of people. It could be any number.
What other candidate was working with Michael Cohen? Why would he be a co-conspirator? No other candidate was working with Michael Cohen, just Trump. So, I mean, but they just can't use his name under federal law. That's what it is. So it doesn't matter, Tom, because he's not going to resign. So your point, if he, listen, if they found out tomorrow that all 21 women who charged him, and he raped all of them, now, many of them didn't say he raped them, but let's just say he raped 21 women. Let's say he murdered 6 people. It wouldn't matter. I will swear to you, it doesn't matter.
But this is when you go over the line.
It doesn't matter what
you go over the line.
It doesn't matter what he does.
You take it into hypotheticals.
No, I'm not.
21 women
you
don't need to take it into hypotheticals.
21 women have charged him.
Understand when you're winning. Understand when you're winning.
I'm talking on this
show.
show.
Oh, God, Fred, you just keep going and going and going. You don't know when to
stop.
There are
21 women who
This is why people don't listen to you guys.
No,
this is why people don't listen to you guys, because you don't know when to
stop.
stop.
There are 21 women who have charged him, and there are people out there who don't believe any of the 21. The odds of that would be 10 octillion to 1, okay? Of not one telling the truth. 21 women have charged him, and it's 35 to 40%, 90% of them will always believe Donald Trump. He is the one who said, I can kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and nobody would care. That's the one true statement he made his entire campaign. So he's right. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't all matter.
That sound you hear are people snoring from you making the same points over and over again, Fred.
It doesn't matter. You're going to get your. You're going to cause a war unless the world blows up, and where there is no presidency or no world or no United States. He's going to start a war.
Oh, baloney.
And if we survive in 220, he's not going to run again, and then perhaps he'll be charged. But as usual, it's Donald Trump winning, other people going to jail. His loyalty only goes one way. That's to him. And I don't think anybody listening can disagree, but many of them don't care.
There are a lot of people who would be just shocked and surprised if you would come up with one original thought. Newsweek says impeachment odds surge following Michael Cohen plea deal, Paul Manafort verdict. According to Newsweek today, just crossed the wires. Betting enthusiasts jumped into action Tuesday following an extraordinary afternoon in which President Donald Trump's former personal attorney pleaded guilty to 8 charges, including campaign finance violations, and his former campaign chairman was found guilty on 8 fraud charges. In the immediate aftermath of the simultaneous legal blockbusters, the odds on Trump being impeachable before his first term is over saw a significant surge.
What are they? I missed that. What is it? What are the odds?
The odds saw a significant surge on political prediction market.
It doesn't matter if he's impeached, because it's going to take 2/3 of the Senate to convict. Yeah, he'll be impeached because the Democrats will probably take over the House, but that doesn't matter if he's impeached. He won't be convicted. You're going to need 67 senators. If you try to
the story goes on to say that on political prediction market predicted, the price on Trump being impeached rose 5 points to 45 cents. The site allows users to buy shares, and if the outcome comes true, all those who brought yes shares will get $1 back per share. So 45 cents gives you $1 right now if he's impeached.
And I agree. He's going to be impeached, but he's not going to be convicted because the Democrats will not take over the Senate. I mean,
the shares on Trump's impeachment have not closed at the price that high.
But folks don't understand the word impeachment, Tom. Folks, impeachment does not mean conviction. Impeachment.
I understand that, Brad. You made that point.
I'm saying you do, but many people don't. So when they say the word impeachment, they think that means he's out. It doesn't. All it means is that the House voted for impeachment. A majority of the House, 51%, voted for impeachment in the House, and then it takes 2/3 of the Senate to convict, and that's the only way you get rid of him. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Right now,
we all know that because your guy got impeached in the 90s, and he didn't leave office because.
Not mine. I've hated Clinton in Arkansas. Tom has this weird thing of thinking that just because I don't like Trump, that means I like the Clintons. Can't stand any of them. Okay, can't stand Chelsea, can't stand Hillary, and couldn't stand Bill. So I don't even know what you're talking about. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is right now the Republicans hold a slight advantage in the Senate. Okay, But everybody says, since most of the seats up, 17 seats are up in the Senate, and most of those seats are Democratic seats that are up, because senators only run every 6 years. Most of those seats are Democratic seats up. There's no way they're going to take enough to get a majority. In fact, most people think Republicans will add 3 or 4 senatorial seats. So that gives them 53 or 54. And, okay, so let's say every Democrat votes for conviction of impeachment. Let's say they have 46. Let's say they have 47. That's going to mean you're going to need 20 Republican senators out of, if they have 54 after the election. That means 20 Republican senators are going to have to vote for conviction. Tom, can you find 20 Republican senators? I can't find 2 that would vote for conviction.
Well, it depends on if it gets worse. The Newsweek story goes on to say it was not only that Cohen, who described himself as operating as a fixer for Trump over more than a decade, pleaded guilty. Cohen directly implicated, according to Newsweek, the president when stating in court that Trump directed him to make a payment to Stormy Daniels to ensure her silence about an alleged affair shortly before the 2016 election. Daniels, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford, was paid $130,000 for the purpose, Cohen said, of influencing the election. So Cohen said in court today that $130,000 payment that you and I have talked about a lot on this show was made with the purpose of influencing the election. If Cohen makes that statement in court and Mueller uses that statement in his report back to Congress, that is an article of impeachment.
Yeah. But I want to repeat, you're going to still need the senators to vote for impeachment. And have you seen many Republican senators who would go against Donald Trump at any point, even if he's as weak as at some point he might be, if this does come to pass? I mean, I just don't see any Republican senators showing the strength to do anything, because so far, I mean, anybody with common sense would know this man is not worthy of being president. He can't handle the job, but they have never spoken up, no matter what he's done, you know, from the tariffs to the anti-NATO thing and to the destroying the Iranian deal. None of them have ever spoken up, except maybe a Jeff Flake now and then, and he's got nothing to lose, or Corker now and then, and he's got nothing to lose because they're not running again. So I don't trust any of these Republican senators to vote against him. That's all I'm saying. I think that he may survive until 2020, unless he. But I think he's going to start a war to protect himself. But it's going to be an interesting next few months, is all I can tell you. And of his 40% or 38%, whatever poll you're looking at, I would say that 90-something% will still support him. You know what? I really believe this, folks, and you can agree or disagree. If they were in the meeting with Stormy Daniels, Trump, and Cohen, and they heard every word, they would still support Donald Trump. So
Daniels says, the Newsweek article, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford, was paid the $130,000 for the purpose, Cohen said, of influencing the election. While Trump originally denied that he knew about the payment, it later emerged that he reimbursed Cohen. The charges against Cohen also included arranging a payment to Karen McDougal, a former Playboy model, who similarly claims she had an affair with Trump a decade later. The Newsweek story, just crossing the wires today, folks, said also that Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, later tried to distance the president from the events in a New York City courtroom. There is no allegation of any wrongdoing against the president and the government's charges against Mr. Cohen, Giuliani said, carefully admitting the words of Cohen. It is clear that, as the prosecutors noted, Mr. Cohen's actions reflect a pattern of lies and dishonesty over a significant period of time, said Giuliani. Despite the president being implicated in a federal crime, it remains far from certain that Congress will take any meaningful action, says Newsweek. There was little comment from Republicans following Tuesday's developments, leading Democrats, perhaps still wary of the impact on the midterm elections in November, did not jump on board, calling on for immediate impeachment proceedings to begin. So there's the latest from Newsweek. And I got to tell you, Fred, although I support most of the policies of the Trump administration, I am I can see the writing on the wall. The writing on the wall right now with that magic hand tells me it's time for Trump to look at mitigating his damages and figuring out a way to get out of this without getting charged federally.
Well, I hope you're right. I think he's so nuts he never will, and he'll battle this to the bitter end. And even if impeachment took place, it couldn't take place until after January 20th, 2019, when the new Congress is situated. So even if the Democrats have, an advantage of 10 or 15 in the House, they're going to be at a disadvantage in the Senate by 4, 5, 6 votes. So you're going to need 17 to 20 Republican senators to vote for impeachment. Somebody in Trump's administration probably can count. I'm not sure about that, but it's possible. And they'll figure that out, that he can't be convicted under those circumstances because
what is next?
What
is next for Robert Mueller? Does he package this all together now and send it to Congress, or does he have something else in his goodie bag to use and to show before he goes forward? Does he wait until the sentencing for Cohen? Does he go to Robert Mueller and say, okay, look, now you've been found guilty on these 8 charges. You could go to prison for up to 100 years. It's looking like probably 20 or 30 years for Mueller, which is a life sentence. Does he go to Mueller, you think, and make a deal with Mueller now to get from Mueller the information he needs on Trump?
You're asking me if Michael Cohen will?
I'm talking about does Robert Mueller go to Manafort and try to make a deal?
I don't think Manafort has to. He'll get a pardon. And Trump's setting that up by saying that it was a crooked situation. I mean, so that's why he's using those terms to get people. Remember now, as he said last week or the week before, don't believe anything you're hearing or you're seeing. And as Rudy said on Sunday, truth is not truth. So why wouldn't he pardon him, like immediately? He could pardon him tonight. Then he wouldn't have, we're living in a Orwellian situation. Anybody who, of course, read George Orwell, 1984, that's what we're living in. With a leader, so-called leader, whatever he says, people bow down to. And so I have no faith in the system. Because, again, I think physically he would have to be dragged out of the White House. He's not the kind of person that would walk in a gentlemanly manner. Like Nixon said goodbye, and he got on the helicopter, he waved to us. They're just two different people. So Nixon was much brighter, and he was narcissistic, but not to this point. And, I hope you're right, Tom. I hope the guy walks and says, it's time for me to leave. Can we work a deal out, Mueller? Boom, boom, boom. But he never will because he's never wrong. And if you're never wrong, you don't have to cave at anything.
Michael Cohen's deal brings with it a 3 to 5 year sentence.
Yep.
And whether he gets the 3 or the 5 probably depends on what he brings to the table between now and sentencing day. Fox News is saying, Fred, Michael Cohen, President Trump's longtime personal attorney, admitted Tuesday to violating federal campaign finance laws by arranging hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels and former Playboy model Karen McDougal at the direction of then-candidate Donald Trump. In entering the plea, Cohen did not specifically name the 2 women or even Trump, recounting instead that he worked with an unnamed candidate, but the amounts and the dates all lined up with the payments made to Daniels and McDougal. And total, Cohen pleaded guilty to 5 counts of tax evasion, 1 count of making false statements to a financial institution, 1 count of willfully causing an unlawful corporate contribution, and 1 count of making an excessive campaign contribution. So here comes this bank fraud thing. This bank fraud thing's got to be scaring a lot of people in this country. Who doesn't lie about their income or their real estate properties when they're getting additional loans, just about everybody inflates the value of their property. But people have got to be scared to death learning that can be a federal crime.
And this is after, on a daily basis, he's talking about, I'm here to protect the laws, and every campaign city he's in, he says, I'm here to protect the laws and make sure it adheres to laws. And the one guy that never adheres to laws is the guy on top. And your excuse for Manafort is nonsensical because, A, not everybody lies. I've never lied on my income tax. Again, I'm not talking $60 million, but it doesn't matter, if it's $6,000, $60,000, or $6 million. I've never lied on my income tax. I don't believe you've ever lied on your income tax. I don't believe everybody's lied on their income tax. I mean, you try to get as much as you can legally, but I don't think you go beyond that. Because I believe in the law. I believe if you lie, I mean, somebody at the bottom is not getting fed, by our system. And so I would never lie to the IRS. But again, at this point, there's nothing that Manafort wouldn't do. I mean, the $60 million is really, just one small thing. And folks, what you have to understand is, he was convicted of 8 counts, okay, of 18. The other 10, he wasn't acquitted. They all could have been 11-1 or 10-2, or they could have been 6-6. But they could have. I'm betting that most of them were 10-2 in that range. So that means that he was 85% convicted on the other 10. So I mean, there was nobody who thought he was innocent. So I mean, he wasn't acquitted of anything. I mean, all 18 charges. I mean, they could. Well, the point is, the prosecution can go back on these other 10 and maybe get some more convictions, but I don't think they're going to think it's worth it to spend the money because next month, in September, Manafort's got more problems. He has now got to go to D.C. Against the judge who already doesn't like him because he sent him to the regular jail last month, and stronger charges, much stronger charges that could definitely be life, even for a younger person than a 69. So I don't know what the response would be, but my belief is Donald Trump will pardon Manafort. Even though it looks bad, he doesn't care because he knows his people will still be blinded to the fact that he's a thief. So he would have no reason not to pardon Manafort at this time, and I believe he will.
Thank you.
Well, Cohen could have received, according to Fox News, up to 65 years in prison if convicted on all the charges. However, as part of his plea deal, Fox News says Cohen agreed not to challenge any sentence between 46 and 63 months. So 46 to 63 months is what he faces. The deal does not involve a cooperation agreement with federal prosecutors. Cohen is set to be sentenced December 12th. The federal government, Fred, has what's called an acceptance of responsibility piece that goes to sentencing. And if Cohen does anything at all in writing, in letters, in speaking to reporters or anybody that denotes that he does not accept full responsibility, they can use that to do 2 things. One, to give him the higher amount toward that 63 months, or 2, to even throw away the plea deal. So Cohen's going to have to be very careful between now and sentencing date as to what he says. If he says something, writes a letter and sends it to somebody and it gets printed and gets back to the court, the prosecution is going to have to tell the court that he has accepted responsibility for his actions as part of the plea. They won't do that if he makes any kind of negative comment about this situation. So he must be very careful. Otherwise, that particular piece of federal sentencing will get to him. Cohen is set to be sentenced December 12th, Brett.
Well, I think his attorney's one sharp guy. Lenny has been involved, with the Clintons and the whole thing. So I think he'll keep his mouth shut. I don't think there's any question about that. But I want to go back to it. I heard of Avante today again, And he repeated one thing that people should understand. And nothing he's said since he started doing the TV things, maybe in March or April, I don't remember exactly when, but there's nothing he said that hasn't come true. He said there were 3 other women that he can bring in front of you tomorrow that have also been paid off by Cohen and Trump. So we'll probably, before this all comes down, there's going to be at least 5 payoffs in this circumstance. And if Omarosa's got some tapes, there might have been more than that. And at some point, some of those 40% may see the light, but I doubt it. I mean, I would say 90% will stick with him no matter what, just as he said, I can kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and nobody will care, and I think that's probably the case.
Trending Topics News Radio Live with Tom Simon in Williston, North Dakota, Fred Walin in Westlake Village, California, on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Good to have you with us. We're here most of the time on Mondays for you, but yesterday, Fred, you were out and about at a very important event. Tell us about it.
I was at Fred Clare, former Los Angeles Dodger general manager, who I knew pretty well years ago when I did Dodger Talk here locally. Very nice man. He developed cancer last year on his face and his jaw, and the City of Hope saved his life. And he had an event, a golf tournament last year and this year to raise money for the City of Hope, and it was called the Celebration of Life, and Tommy Lasorda was honored, and Fred Clare spoke, and there were other spokesmen, and a lot of Tommy Lasorda's former players, through '88 and then later were there. Mickey Hatcher was there and things like that, and Garvey was there, and of course Garvey wasn't on the '88 team, but he was there because he had played for Lasorda, and Steve Yeager was there, and he wasn't on the '88 team, but he was there. A lot of former Dodgers were there, but anyways, it was a great night, and I'm sure they made thousands of dollars golfing donations and meal donations to the City of Hope. And again, the City of Hope, like St. Jude's, if you don't have money, you don't have to pay. So these donations keep people alive and allow parents to bring kids in there and not have to worry about paying back hundreds of thousands of dollars, because unless you've gone through this, you have no idea how expensive going to a hospital might be, and in some cases you don't have insurance, and then you're bankrupt. And thank God for places like the City of, if there is a God, the City of Hope and St. Jude's. And Sandy and I are, we don't make a lot of money, but whatever donations we give go to the City of Hope or St. Jude's. In fact, on my Amazon account, I give to St. Jude's. And folks, you can still go to fredclaregolf.com, fredclaregolf.com, and if you're so inclined, give a few bucks to the City of Hope, because it does great work.
Very good, Fred. Glad to see those pictures that you put online, folks. You can see some nice pictures there on Fred's Facebook Live. Go to Fred Walin on Facebook, and you'll see it at WALIN. Want to recap the day's events for you folks. Today, a big day in the investigation into collusion in the 2016 election, the Robert Mueller case. A couple of things happened. Paul Manafort was found guilty on 8 charges, including 2 bank fraud charges and 5 tax avoidance charges. Simultaneously, or almost simultaneously, Michael Cohen, the former lawyer for Donald Trump, pled guilty to 8 charges in federal court. And some very important things were said today, Fred, after that happened. First of all, for those who support Donald Trump and look for what was said by his camp, Giuliani said there is no allegation of any wrongdoing against the president in the government's charges against Mr. Cohen. It is clear that, as the prosecutor noted, Mr. Cohen's actions reflect a pattern of lies and dishonesty over a significant period of time. That's what he said. Now, Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's attorney, was much more critical of the president. Here's what he said, Fred, after the sentence, after the pleading of guilty. This is Michael fulfilling his promise made on July 2nd to put his family and country first and tell the truth about Donald Trump. Davis added, today he stood up and testified under oath that Donald Trump directed him to commit a crime by making payments to two women for the principal purpose of influencing an election. If those payments were a crime for Michael Cohen, then why wouldn't they be a crime for Donald Trump? Cohen's home office and hotel room were raided in April by federal investigators looking into financial dealings. Cohen was behind the $130,000 payment to adult star Stormy Daniels and recently released a tape of conversation from September 22nd, 2016.
And that's why he is a unindicted. He's an unindicted co-conspirator. So for Rudy, as usual, not to know what he's talking about, said nothing touches Trump. That's not true.
You guys hear me?
He is the unindicted conspirator. So, folks, in the federal, one more time before we sign off, because I think the next show is about to scream at our ears. Before we sign off, one more time, in federal court, until you are charged, they can't mention your name. So Trump is called the unindicted co-conspirator. So for Rudy, again, I don't know if he's got dementia or what, to say something that is so stupid I can't believe, except dumber yesterday, truth isn't truth, but that's what it means. Trump is the unindicted co-conspirator. So obviously it touches Trump 100%.
Ralph, you said what?
That's not Ralph. I think it's our next show, the next show that's on the network. I'm guessing.
All right, so we'll see you next week, Fred. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Hi, it's Hal. Anybody cooking here? We are back. Bock score from Nedick at the Old Garden on 49th Street. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and we've got a bevy of folk to talk to Hal Bock. Well, a bevy, too. Three with me. George Case is here. How you doing, George?
Hi, good evening.
And David Hubler is here.
Yes. Oh,
David Hubler.
David.
You know, I'm having brain farts today. That happens on Tuesdays, and I've been covering it up all these many Tuesdays of talking to you guys. But David is here. David and Hal go way back to the old NYU days, and we're talking off the air a little bit, and with a good example of obsolescence, jobs obsolescence, is brought to mind today when Mr. Trump is talking to the coal miners. And David, you made a very, very interesting observation about the coal miners and their prospects for going back to work.
Yeah, well, I don't think they'll be doing much of that anytime soon. My comment was that they have about as much chance of getting back into the coal mines as the old linotype operators do getting back into publishing. And, I mean, it's just a different time. It's a different century. You know, nobody sets up hot type anymore. A kid can go home and set up his own newspaper faster than the linotype operators ever could, and in color. So I just think, you know, people have to get on and adapt. And I think that's one of the government programs that never gets off the ground, these training courses and things to train people for other jobs. And I regret that. I think that's a tragedy, rather than just say, well, we're going to open the mines once again, because they're not going to come back. So,
well, you know, in a way, the changing times are indicative of what's going on in baseball. The changing times. Now, the topic of the day, Hal Bock, I'll ask you, Hal Bock, what's the score?
The score today is a discussion of the designated hitter. We are in 45 years now of the designated hitter, and baseball still hasn't solved the problem of having two sets of rules. American League teams obviously use the DH. National League teams do not. And when we have the World Series, when the games are played in American League cities, the DH is in play. When they're played in the National League cities, they're not. Now, American League teams are built for the long term, for the season, and they're built with a DH. But you take that DH away in the 3 or 4 games of the World Series that are played in National League parks, that's a disadvantage for an American League team. Doesn't seem fair. The Yankees are playing tonight in Tampa, and that's an interleague game. And interleague games, when they're played in National League cities, the DH is not used. Well, the pitcher for the Yankees tonight is a guy named Tanaka, Japanese pitcher, and he last pitched in an interleague game, found himself on third base by some accident or other, and tried to score on a sacrifice fly, and he succeeded in pulling 2 hamstrings, one on each leg, and was out for a month. Oh. So, because pitchers don't hit in the designated hitter era in the American League. So they've got to come up with a solution to this, and the solution is going to be, I'm afraid, that the National League is going to be forced into getting to the designated hitter because there's a big push on, partly because of Tanaka getting hurt that night, hurting both his hamstrings, missing a month, and as a result, the Yankees find themselves 9 games out of first place right now. So besides the Red Sox playing out of their heads, but baseball is trying to protect the players, and I don't like it. I believe that the game is meant to be played with 9 guys, not 10, and but they're going to have, the National League is going to have the designated hitter. Maybe not next year, but certainly within the next couple of years, because the union wants it, because it adds jobs for older players who otherwise might be out of the game. And baseball needs it because of this conundrum that they have of 2 sets of rules. You can't play the game with 2 sets of rules. That's foolishness. So that's where we're at. That's the score. The score is the National League is going to get the DH, and I don't like it, frankly.
Okay, would
you
clarify something for me? Tanaka pulled hamstrings in running out a ball.
No. He was trying to score on a sacrifice fly. I believe he scored the run.
Yeah, he did. He did.
That's how he hurt himself.
Isn't running a major part of a pitcher's training?
Well, it used to be. It used to be, big time. But I'm not sure anymore. I can only tell you when going back a long ways. Part of the training for pitchers was that you ran because the first thing that went, the old pitching coaches would always say to a player, the first thing that's going to go is your legs. So you got to have your legs. And once you lose your legs, then your arm, your motion, everything, changes. And so, I can understand why he might have pulled his hamstrings because he wasn't used to running. Because what the hell if he's only walking out to the mound and he doesn't have any need to run if he's in the American League. But in the old days,
because of so many arm injuries, is that players are throwing with their arms and not their
I think body? Part of my opinion, and I've never been a big advocate of weight training. I think that they're overusing weights as far as pitchers are concerned. Now, I don't know, but there have been an awful lot of arm injuries, and whether or not it's because they don't run as much as they used to, or whether, the pitch counts, they're only pitching 5 innings, 6 innings, whatever, there's something that's causing all these problems. And I can tell you, arm injuries have been, as Hal and David, they go back forever. But right now there seems to be a preponderance. Maybe it's because everybody knows about it. They say it all the time. But it seems to me that there's a tremendous amount of arm injuries. And I just read the other day, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about Tommy John surgery. apparently Tommy John surgery has really been reduced dramatically in the last few years or few months, because they've come up now with some of these stem cell researchers, and that's what they're using. If a player has a bad arm or has had a problem throwing because of it, what had been his tendons or whatever, they can now use this stem cell and replace whatever had been damaged. So now they don't have to do the Tommy John surgery as often as they used to. Now, that's just something I read. I have no knowledge of it, but I read it online the other day.
Oh, interesting.
That is interesting. I wonder if I just wonder how some organized religions will take to that. Aren't they adamant against stem cells?
Stem cells, sure. The government is prohibited from even paying for research into stem cell,
right?
Because of conservative groups that think it's not.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know. Other than what I read, it might be just somebody writing an opinion, or it might be fact. I mean, I don't know. But the thing that bothered me when they were talking about Tommy John surgery a long time ago, and I got on my high horse because I heard that a lot of parents were recommending and telling their youngsters to get Tommy John surgery before they were even hurt as a preventative.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, and to me, that is just...
Kids,
to me, that's just outrageous.
Not necessarily before they were hurt, but hurt at all. But if at hurt at all, if there's a doubt, they'll have them take the surgery rather than a rehab program, because the surgery, ironically, oftentimes makes a guy throw faster, tightens up ligaments, strengthens whatever, and these guys come out.
Yeah, well, that might be the case for a 23, 24-year-old pitcher, but for a 12-year-old kid, I'm not so sure that's the cure. The kid's got to grow yet.
These parents today are...
I know. Yeah, well,
I agree. You know what, Ralph and Hal and David, I agree with all that. I mean, I've been a thing, with my father being a ball player. I mean, the one thing that he told me when I was 11 years old and I was pitching in Little League, I was a big kid. He said, look, I want you to throw fastballs. I want you to learn change speeds. He said, but I do not want you throwing curveballs. And I never did. I never threw a curveball until I was a senior in high school.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of coaches believe in that now too, but not the Little League coaches. They love that sort of stuff.
Hey, they love to get an advantage. I mean, I watched the Little League World Series or something yesterday, and kids are introducing themselves and slow motion replays and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, this is absolutely crazy. These kids are 12 years old.
I know. And some of them look like about 16, especially the pitchers. You got some of these Little League pitchers, they're big kids. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. But I wanted to go back. I wanted to say something about what Hal was saying. And, part of the reason that I think Hal is absolutely right on target here with the designated hitter going to the National League, one of the reasons one of the ways that it's being, promoted, of course, is that up until whatever the year is, not that far long ago, but, you had an American League president, a National League president, and a commissioner. So the American League had its rules, the National League had its rules, the umpires were even different, and now they've all merged into MLB.
And that's right. It's homogenized. But there's another side of all this. The designated hitter became is a one-dimensional player. He doesn't play in the field.
Right.
And that impacts on things like Hall of Fame eligibility. Now, Edgar Martinez, who used to play for the Seattle Mariners, he's going to go in the Hall of Fame next year because he's really close, and it's his last year of eligibility, and I'm sure he'll get enough votes to go in. He would have gone in far in advance if he hadn't been a DH, because voters, and I know I once was a voter, voters hold it against the designated hitter types because they say, well, you're only half a player.
Yeah.
Where's your defense? Where did you play on defense? Martinez played third base for a while, but very short time, and became a full-time DH. And the theory that they put the DH in place because allegedly pitchers couldn't hit, right? That was the theory, that they would
allegedly. You're right. You're right, Hal.
Take a pitcher out. Well,
you take a bat out of their hands, they never will hit.
Right, that's right. Have them look at the numbers that some of these pitchers put up in my generation. A guy like Newcomb.
That's what I was just thinking of.
Dodgers. A guy like Spahn, who hit something like 30 home runs. A guy like Tony Cloninger, who just died a few weeks ago. Cloninger hit 2 Grand Slam home runs in one game. Right. So that's part of the game. That's part of the attraction of the game. Wow, the pitcher just hit a Grand Slam home run. How did that happen? Well, Casey Stengel said, come to the ballpark, you'll see something you never saw before. And he's right. He was right. And, and the people who designed this game 150 years ago did one hell of a job. And now, the new age baseball, they're taking it away from us. Little by little, they're taking away one of the greatest sports ever invented, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, Hal, you know what? I'm agreeing with you 1,000%, and I don't need to get on my soapbox. I've been against the DH from the outset. I don't like it. I know it's there. I know they did it, and now what I dislike even more is having 2 sets of rules at the highest level of baseball. To me, eventually the National League will adopt the DH. I mean, I would much prefer that there was no DH because I think it's just an artificial, when you have a DH, your strategy changes completely if you're a manager. And, I've said it before, you don't have a DH, you got a pitcher, he's got to hit. Some of them are good hitters. You just mentioned Newcomb and Cloninger and Spahn. I can go in Walter Johnson and Wes Farrell and Red Ruffing. And I mean, on and on and on, guys that were good hitters. They weren't just an automatic out. But you're up there. They're never going to be 350 hitters, but they're going to do their job. They're going to be in the 250s or whatever. And if the situation calls for a bunt, because that's the called for strategy, and the pitcher's up and you got a runner to move them up or whatever, or you got to hit the ball to the opposite field, that's what a pitcher's going to do. But if you take the bat out of his hand, like they do in the American League, then all you have is a DH. And that DH is going to get up there 4 times and going to go for the fences. And I saw an article just yesterday, I guess it was, that right now there's more home runs, more strikeouts than home runs in Major League Baseball this year.
Well, that's what the game has become. I'm going to be writing about that in another week or so.
Yep.
The game has become a game of strikeouts and home runs.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's not the way the game was designed. The beauty of the game is the strategy and all of the different aspects of a hit and run, a double steal, a bunt, on and on I could go. But these are all.
How many times have you guys heard the expression, help yourself, kid? The pitcher's coming up. Help yourself. In other words, that was a major part of strategy. Can the pitcher be effective? Could he lay down a bunt, for crying out loud? There are some teams that don't bunt at all. I think it was last Sunday, we talked about this. There's one team that has
San Diego, I think. Was it San Diego? They have not had.
It was one of the West Coast teams, I think, David and Ralph and Hal, that they haven't bunted once this year.
Once this year.
Right.
And then there was that. Then there was the guy. I forget. The player who the situation was just perfect for a bunt, and the manager didn't give him that signal because the guy had never bunted before.
Right.
Never bunted.
Never bunted.
Professional baseball and never bunted.
And never bunted.
Instructional league.
Nothing.
Nothing like that. Never.
Unbelievable.
Well, they're not teaching them. They're not teaching them how to bunt. Bunting is a lost art because nobody teaches it. There's a right way and a wrong way to bunt. And if you see guys today, they get up there and they're flailing the bat and they're dipping the bat and they're popping it up, they're missing the ball. That's not the way to bunt. You're supposed to let the ball hit the bat and you keep the bat level. That's the way it's done.
With the bat.
Catch the ball with the bat, right? Catch the ball with the bat.
A lot of these guys push the bat toward the ball, which is definitely the wrong way to do it.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
I know.
Yankees used to, the late Phil Rizzuto was a great
you
punter.
can imagine
Yankees used to put him
punter
into training camp
600.
to teach that skill.
Yes, right.
Well, they did, and they used to play pepper, which they don't do anymore, and I still don't have any idea why they don't. But that's how you learn bat control. Pepper was a game that they played for decades in baseball because the players loved it. You'd get up there and you'd have 3 or 4 or 5 guys, throwing to you, and you'd learn to bunt, to the right side, to the left side, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's how you played, and you did it over and over again. And that was part of before every ball game, players would play pepper. That's what they used to do. Now you see the signs, no playing pepper. I mean, I don't know why, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, there was somebody posted a early film of Babe Ruth on Facebook the other day, and he was a young, slim guy. He must have been about 20, and he was just taking cuts, just standing on the side. But behind him, there were 4 or 5 players playing pepper. Now, that goes back to like 1920. We thought 100 years ago almost.
Right.
Right.
Nobody does it anymore.
That particular clip shows the intensity of his swing. It was absolutely a vicious swing at the ball. With an incredible follow through. That was a great piece of footage.
Yeah, it was very unusual. Yeah. I'm not even sure what team he was with because the uniforms didn't have any names on them.
I think he was still with Boston.
He might have been.
He could have been if he was slim. He probably was, David, because he was pitching then.
Right.
That probably was before he got to the Yankees. You're right. Yep.
And if you ever see Babe in a uniform with the NY on it, a Yankee uniform with the NY on it, know that was taken either in a movie or when he was coming back for an old-timers day. When he played, they didn't have the insignia NY on the Yankee uniform. They had the pinstripes, but not the insignia. So
and the numbers reflected your place in the batting order.
Right.
So Ruth batted third, he wore number 3. Gehrig batted 4th, he wore number 4.
Right.
Which was a sensible way to go about things, I guess.
That's where Hal, that's exactly where they did it. The leadoff guy, number 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how those numbers and then those numbers were put in. I believe it was 1929. So, if you ever see any footage, before that, or you're looking up stats, they won't have uniform numbers on anybody because nobody wore numbers on their uniform.
Speaking of uniform numbers, have you noticed the growth of ball players who are wearing numbers in the 80s and 90s?
Oh,
it's
not
spring training. It's
right.
In the spring training, you could always tell who was not going to make the club because he was wearing number 86, 87, some crazy numbers. But look at Judge; he wears 99. Who's going to put up 100 on there?
It's all over the place. You're right, David.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
Because they've run out of numbers. They're retired. The Yankees, how many Yankee numbers have been retired? My God.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they don't have, the single digits are all gone.
Yeah,
and 8 was retired twice by the Yankees.
That's right, for Bill Dickey and Yogi Berra.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Now, let me add something to something that was said on one of these shows a few weeks ago. We're talking about how the Mets, when they came into being, they took the orange from the Giants,
mm-hmm.
and they took the blue from the Dodgers, but it wasn't mentioned they also took their pinstripes from the Yankees.
From the Yankees, right.
True.
Yeah.
That's true. That may be why they're cursed. That could be the reason. There's nobody.
There was an article in the paper the other day that made me laugh. It said, "Are the Yankees turning into the Mets? Are the Yankees cursed like the Mets with injuries?" They had another one this past week, and
D.D. Gregorius hurt his.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's on the disabled.
But isn't it sad that that the comparison is the Mets? that's the low bar that everybody refers to.
The Mets thought they were solving this problem. They fired the entire training staff after last season. Everybody, the head trainer, the assistant trainer, the strength and conditioning coach, everybody out. And they fired them all. And take a look at the disabled list that the Mets are tugging around this season. It's unbelievable. That team is cursed. There's no question in my mind.
Let me quote.
And now, here's the latest. Wait, I have major news for you guys. I don't know if you know it or not. David Wright is playing rehab games. He hasn't played in 2 years.
Yep.
And he's 35 years old. But he's going to be on the roster in September, I'll guarantee you, because they got to sell seats, you know. So he's playing rehab games.
If Tebow hadn't gotten hurt, he would have been on the roster there as well.
Without question.
Yeah. It's become a dog and pony show as far as I'm concerned.
Quite true.
And you say, well, what's wrong with that? Give the kid a chance. Give the 30-year-old quarterback a chance to play in the big leagues and let him go through the minors. Well, you know, there is some prospect, some person who lost playing time and development time and career opportunities to advance to that little experiment. That's all it's going to do with Tebow is put some bucks in the minor league affiliates' pocket and this, that, and the other thing. It's not worth it if you're selling out the rights. There are only so many roster spots, so many playing spots, and
but when you're 20 games under 500 in September, like last night at the Citi Field, the Giants came to town to play the Mets, and it was a futile game. They played 13 innings, and it was only because of an error that the Giants won in the 13th inning. And they had maybe 8,000 people in the building, and most of them were Giant fans, because the team is awful. They're going nowhere, and how are you going to sell tickets? You got to figure out a way to sell tickets. So Tebow would have sold tickets. A David Wright will sell tickets.
Mm-hmm.
How you watched that game, and you mentioned the error, and the error was made because the shortstop is going out for a pop fly, and the left fielder is coming in. And he got the blame for almost running over the shortstop. But the way I remember baseball being played, isn't the guy coming in the guy with the better chance to catch the ball than the guy going out? And maybe the error was as much the shortstop's fault as the left fielder, who has really been a bust, Dom Smith, at first for the Mets. He was a big prospect. They put him in the minors, taught him a little left field. But I thought that he took too much heat on that particular play.
He takes heat every day. He's been a terrible disappointment to this team because they thought he was their first baseman for the next 10, 15 years. And he can't get a batting average over 200. He just washed out last season, and they brought him back to spring training, and they said, okay, you're going to compete for the first base job, and
just to lose.
The first day of training camp of workouts, he was late. He overslept. Well, come on, you dummy, get out there. So that set him back a little bit. And then he hurt himself, and he was sent down to the minors, and he's been a washout. He's been a real disappointment to this team. Now, what the hell he was doing in left field, I don't know.
He made as well before his stats notwithstanding, they were horrible, but he jaked it on something.
He did.
Before
I saw the play, and he tried to pass the ball between his legs or something. And
backhanded.
Of course, it was an error, of course. And led to a base runner that shouldn't have been there. And you can't have that. This is the major leagues. This is not the American Legion ball, you know? You play the game. Play it properly. But he's been a
And if you want to keep a fan in New York do not dog it down the first baseline or anything like that.
Exactly.
If you want to keep because New York fans will respond to the overachiever 100 times more than they will the superstar that's an underachiever. So he's, as you say, this guy is not the brightest light on the set.
No, not at all.
But
well, speaking of
defense, I thought that play last night, he was coming in, the shortstop going out. That could have gone either way in terms of, how about this? They should have communicated a little better.
Well, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to holler
because there was nobody else in the ballpark.
Yeah, that's
You used to, you used to be trained that way. If the guy coming in, is the outfitter, he'll say, I got it, or whatever he's going to say. It is easier. You're right, Ralph. As far as my remembrance, it's easier coming in than it is going out.
Sure, and you have a better view of what's going on in front of you.
Right.
There's
also plays that happen sometimes in baseball. And my dad used to laugh, and he told me this. He said, that's a, I got it, you take it, which means there's two players, and one's coming in, one's going out. They both stop, and they let the ball drop right between them.
Yep.
Right.
There's that happens, and that's miscommunication because, one guy was probably saying, I got it. The other guys are saying, I got it, and they both stop. And the ball drops between them. So, you got to be able to communicate.
The fans are so loud that you can't hear anything.
One of my favorite anecdotes of the early Mets, the '62 Mets, who merely lost 120 games, a record. You can't make that stuff up. 120 losses. And one of the reasons was they had a shortstop named Elio Chacon, slick fielding shortstop. They had a left fielder named Frank Thomas who hit 34 home runs that year. And Frank Thomas is coming in on a ball, and he's yelling, I'll get it, or I'll have it, I got it. He's yelling, I'll try it. Elio Chacon, the one problem that he didn't speak English. So he had no idea what Frank Thomas was yelling about. And so, an error. Created an error.
Well, when I played softball down in Panama, you yell, "Lo tengo." Meaning, I have it. So he should have known that. It's a very simple phrase to learn.
Well, speaking of those early years, I'm going to relay this story that I was at a doubleheader in late June, when in the first game of the doubleheader, Lou Brock, who had been playing with the Cubs, comes up with the Cubs, probably weighed 145 pounds. Little skinny guy, muscles up and hits a ball into the center field bleachers. Now, I know all you guys remember the dimensions of the Polo Grounds. That was a shot and a half. That's the first game of the doubleheader. The second game of the doubleheader, Marv Throneberry hits what was going to be a triple, and the umpire calls him out for missing the first base.
I know this story.
Right. Cookie
He said something about. Didn't he say something about? Well, don't holler too much because he missed second too, or whatever.
Exactly.
So what happened was that he wound up on third base, and the umpire called him out, and Casey came limping out of the dugout on his way out to argue the call, and Cookie Lavagetto was the first base coach for the Mets, and he said, don't bother, Casey. He missed first and second also. Or he missed second also.
Yeah,
and those things happened to that team.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it was almost fun to watch him. It was enjoyable. It was their first year. It wasn't fun the second year, I remember.
Well, it was fun. It was fun because you knew right off the bat that they weren't going anywhere. And they had a semblance of old stars that, weren't playing, that weren't seen in New York on a regular basis. So that was fun to go to. There was no pressure. They weren't going to win anything. So it was more like an exhibition game when you went there than it was a real, counting major league game.
Yeah.
Well, it was also good copy for the writers too.
Oh,
I remember, Casey. Didn't he have a famous quote? Can't anybody here play this game?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There were like 5 or 6 books came out of that first year. Durso wrote a book.
And Leonard Coppett.
Leonard Coppett wrote
Jimmy
the
Breslin.
ultimate book. Yes, Can Anybody Play This Game? But Coppett's book was just terrific. They were all terrific in their own ways. Just a very well written about team because you had all these newspapers. What was it like getting a scoop, Hal? How many newspapers were there, and to be different? That was exciting as hell, I'm betting.
Well, there were 7 New York City newspapers in the beginning in 1962. Then you have to, if you take 7, but you have to add to it the suburban newspapers, the Westchester Rockland and Jersey papers, the Jersey Journal and the Newark Star Ledger and Bergen Record and
Long Island Press.
Yeah, exactly. Long Island Press, Long Island Star Journal. So there were a lot of people covering those games.
And the Bronx.
Besides which, you not only had a beat writer, but you had columnists. So they were all over the place. The locker room was like Grand Central Station. And it's one of the reasons I don't go to games as a retiree, because I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be one of these hangers-on who, loves to hang out in the clubhouse if I don't have any business here. If I'm working and I'm writing, that's another matter. But there were so many hangers-on and just, visiting firemen sort of people, and that got under my skin. I didn't like that at all. But they were, as I think it was David or George said, they were an attraction because you never knew what was going to happen next. It was just a comedy show of all time. Plus, they had very familiar names. They had Gil Hodges. They had Deke Snyder. They had Warren Spahn for a while.
And I think Robin Roberts pitched for them right at the beginning.
Who was that?
Robin Roberts, I think, pitched for them for a year.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I think you
Roger Craig.
Roger Craig, yes.
Al Jackson.
Yes.
They had a bunch of guys who were familiar faces to the New York audience, but unfortunately,
Richie Ashburn, a future Hall of Famer.
Yes, that's right. That's right. He was their best player.
Right.
So they had, it was an interesting group, and they laid the foundation that developed into a championship team in 1969. 7 years later, they won the World Championship.
Yep.
So you can't ignore that. You can't deny that. Because they had good scouting and they had good prospects. They had a young pitcher named Tom Seaver and another one named Jerry Koosman and a relief pitcher named Tug McGraw, and I could go on and on. Now, today, as we talk, they have no prospects. Their farm system is barren. And so this is a real problem for that franchise. I don't know how they're going to solve it.
I know that, talking about ex-Mets, the Nats today traded Daniel Murphy.
Happy to have him out of the division. He came
and I don't know where he went, so I didn't hear that.
He went to the Cubs.
He went to the Cubs.
Oh.
And they also traded Matt Adams.
Yeah, right.
I think he went to the Cardinals. So this is a time of the year, and they get nothing back in exchange. They get low-level prospects.
Yeah, I can't understand that because, Murphy had come around from his injuries. He was sitting pretty well, and he was not a bad fielder.
If you're going to punt the season, you got to get rid of salary because
you dump salary and you don't have any commitment to him. And if you want him back, go sign him in the off season because he's going to be a free agent. So,
And sometimes you get prospects back that help. I think the Mets got a prospect back catching prospect. They did, the catcher that they have for Harvey. He wasn't a prospect, but he was coming off.
Yeah, he's been around.
He's helped them.
Mesoraco, yeah.
Yeah.
And Pilecki seems to be coming around a little bit. There's a kid named Alonzo, a first baseman in the minors.
First baseman, yeah.
And
they're trying to figure out whether to pick him up, you know. Yeah, he's a prospect. And
there's the guy they got from Asdrubal Cabrera.
Yeah, Asdrubal Cabrera.
Was their MVP this year. He was terrific. He stayed healthy and versatile guy. But they got a pitching prospect whose name escapes me, who is causing some stir. And they have a catcher coming up. They have two catchers. One, Nido, who's advanced a little bit, and a catcher at Port St. Lucie that's a prospect. So,
but you know, if you're at Port St. Lucie, you're not going to be here next year. You're not going to be here probably for 2 years at least. So you're looking at a rather desolate future for this team until these guys develop, if they develop at all.
Well, here's some positive thoughts, Hal. Bruce is coming back either today or over the weekend, and apparently he's healthy again. And they kept together the big three pitchers, the top three starters. DeGrom could be as good a pitcher as is in baseball. He could be a Cy Young.
Got the best ERA.
Definitely has the best ERA. Pitched a complete game the other day, which is very encouraging. That making a statement that they could go out, maybe the first complete game of the year for the Mets. And Thor and
Wheeler.
He pitched a good game last night. He's always around the plate. He's healthy.
You know what happened to him last night? He's leading 1-0. The Mets managed to get a run in the first inning, and they're leading 1-0 in the seventh inning. And the Giants had a runner in scoring position, and he induced the hitter to hit a pop fly to the shortstop side of second base. However, the Mets were in the famous shift. So the shortstop, Rosario, was playing to the right side of second base, not where he should have been at the shortstop position. So he had to run like hell, and he didn't get there. The ball dropped in, the tying run scored. So, once again, new age baseball with all of these shifts and all of these deep thinking mathematical formulas, and you wind up giving up a run and wind up losing a game. Now, I don't understand. People, I'm not the only guy who sees this. I mean, the people who are running these clubs have to see this, and I wonder at some point are they going to say, wait a minute, this is not working out. But so far they're wed to the analytics crowd. And
oh yes, oh yeah.
Well, I'm with you there, Hal and David and Ralph. We talked the other day. I mean, to me, the sabermetrics and all this stuff, it's getting overdone. And you got to have some baseball people, thinking a little bit about the way the damn game is played. And you don't just push a button and all of a sudden, magic happens on the field. You got to know what the heck you're doing. And how what you're talking about is shift. I mean, that's something that's been part of baseball for a long, long time. It's just that, if they're overshifted and a guy wants to beat the shift, he's going to hit the other way. But today, the guys would rather knock one into the stands rather than be intelligent about and say, hey, if they're playing to my strength, I'm going to go the other way because nobody's over there.
Yeah, that was one thing that always frustrated me about Mark Teixeira. Always a straight pull hitter right down the right field line. They'd stack the deck over there on the right side, and he would ground out. More often, by the last couple of years of his career, he wasn't doing anything. He was more of a hindrance than a help.
Right. Yep.
Isn't baseball to be like a game of adjustments? They used to say you got to adjust. If they're pitching you inside, you got to hit inside out. This, that, and the other thing. Players just go with that one stroke, that elevated stroke, trying to get the ball velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what do they call it? Velocity angle or some crazy thing? I mean,
right.
You know.
And the pitchers
it's a different world today when guys are up there, because you know what, you should be a line drive hitter. You're trying to help your team. You're trying to, you don't have to put one in the seats every time, and yet you see guys doing that. I mean, instead of protecting the plate with 2 strikes, they're still making a huge swing to say, okay, I can still jack one out. Instead, the way it used to be, hey, you got 2 strikes on you, you protect the plate. You
just choke up.
That's what you have to do.
Choke up on the bat.
Right.
George, you mentioned something the other day when your dad played. The worst thing you could do is strike out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was.
And today, it's just like, hey, I struck out. What's the difference? But that play you guys talked about, which beat the Mets, was a result of the batter just putting the ball in play, not striking out.
Right.
Hit a pop fly, it goes for a double.
Something might happen.
Strike out. An accidental
something
double
might happen.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
That's the charm of the game,
Right.
But they don't seem to recognize it.
No. How many excuse-me swings would result in an infield hit where the excitement of the third baseman coming in to one-hand it and what have you? Well, they still do that, but certainly not as many times per game because of the strikeout factor of not putting the ball in play. So as a fan, we're missing the exciting plays, and we're missing the strategy. Any idiot could manage if you just looked, if that's all they're doing is sabermetrics and that sort of stuff. You just look down, you see, well, this guy, 14% chances here. Well, instead of looking down, why don't you teach your batter, go over to your batter and say, look, why don't you just bunt here, just this one time. It'll look like a line drive in the box score.
That's right. That's right.
Well, it also if you're playing, and I'm not following the game the way I used to, but if you're playing and you're a hitter and you're a right-handed hitter and you're looking down and you see the third baseman playing deep because you're a dead pull hitter, drop a bunt down. You got a hit.
He's giving you a hit. He's giving you a base.
Right.
Without question, he's giving you the hit.
Instead, these guys are trying to hit one into the seats because that's what they do today. But on the other hand, that's why I mentioned earlier, you've got more strikeouts than you do home runs this year, which to me is just incredible.
Hey, 40-plus hitters that are full-time players qualify as, if they were to win the batting title, that type of thing. 40 of them are batting under 200, under the Mendoza line, which, no one wanted to get under the Mendoza line. Mendoza didn't want to get under the Mendoza line. And now you got 40 full-time regulars batting under 200. That's disgraceful.
It's scandalous. It really is.
Yeah.
Certainly is. It used to be the mark. You say, hey, you're a major league hitter. You're a good hitter. You hit 300, right? That was your goal. And then you had guys who are really good hitters. They're hitting 330, 340, 350. Ted Williams hits 406 in 1941, 77 years ago. Nobody's done that since. And I can tell you that there were a lot of guys that were probably, good hitters. And you look at DiMaggio and you look at Mantle and Mara, these guys, they struck out, but they didn't strike out the way the guys are doing it today. My Lord. You're talking
George
guys
Brett,
that are...
the Hall of Fame third baseman from the Kansas City Royals, batted, I think, .390 in 1980, and he was like 5 hits short of becoming a 400 hitter. He had an amazing season. And he was quoted the other day as saying, if they had the shift when I played, I'd have hit over 400, well over 400.
I'm sure he would have. You know,
sure.
you wouldn't hit into where they're shifting. You go the other way. That's the way a major league hitter is supposed to do it. I mean, that's it. You know, when you're looking at a shift. I mean, now Williams, as strong a hitter as Ted Williams was, you know, he took it upon himself. And I know, you know, when they first put the shift on Williams in '46, you know, he said, hell with that. I'm going to hit the way I hit. But later on in his career, he learned to go the opposite way because he knew he was going to get some more hits.
It's true.
How many hits did Jeter get going the other way? He was famous for going the other way.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
Did DiMaggio have more home runs
about
than
before
strikeouts?
Was a good hitter to in the other direction. He got a lot of hits to right field.
Yep.
Did DiMaggio have more home runs than strikeouts one year?
He did.
Maybe for his
career.
Yeah, he did. Yep.
He did for his career. That's remarkable.
Yep.
That is remarkable. Because he wasn't a choke-up kind of hitter.
No.
With this long stride and wow, I wonder, you know, just go back, you wonder if these guys hadn't lost so much wartime, what their stats would be.
It's amazing. They lost the heart of their career. DiMaggio, Bob Bella, Hank Greenberg, all in all. I mean, Ted Williams, Jerry Coleman. I mean, Jerry Coleman was a fighter pilot in 2 wars.
Right.
You know.
So, in any event, we get to look back, and this is fun doing it. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a good show.
Well, thank you, and Hal, thank you for that article, that piece you wrote on the DH. It really gave us some food for thought. And again, I think it was great. And my opinion is that I hope it doesn't happen, but I think it's going to happen. That you're eventually going to have both leagues with the DH.
Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right, because the union is hard to buck, and it's one of their highest paid positions is the DH.
Yeah.
And
the icing on the cake will be when Big Papi goes into the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
That'll legitimize the DH.
You're absolutely right. I don't think he ever played.
I don't think he first base a little bit, very little.
Yeah, a little bit early in his career, but for years and years. I mean, that was it. Big Papi. I mean, that was his position, DH.
Yep. Yeah, and he was very good at it.
Absolutely.
Especially against the Yankees. Oh God, he killed us all the time.
Yep.
Well, I just want to end by asking you guys if you saw the clip of the sister, the nun.
Oh yeah.
Going out.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Was that fun or what? This woman gets
great.
on the mound and throws a curveball strike. That was very, very cool.
But I like the way she bounced the ball off her forearm.
Yeah, right. She did.
She had a good spirit, if you will.
She certainly did.
There's also another heartening thing. The Mets and the Phillies Sunday night played a game, not an exhibition game, but a game in the Little League.
They're up in Williamsport.
In Williamsport, they have a center there, and they have a stadium, and the players from the tournament in the Little League got to interact with the Major League players, some of whom sat in the stands with them, starting pitchers that weren't going to be in the game and what have you, sat in the stands with these kids. The commissioner sat in the stands with these kids, related to the kids. Baseball is making a concerted effort to get the children, if you will, the youth of America, as Casey would say, to bring them into baseball. And I thought that was a wonderful deal. Either the Mets or Phillies or both and baseball gave up a big pay night to do it, and I think is well worth it. And to see the look on these kids' face interacting with these players, it was terrific. So,
yeah, it's just a shame they don't play more games during the day so the kids can see them.
Yeah, I think it's long overdue. Baseball is maybe slowly awakening to the fact that they're losing all these young kids and to the other sports. But
that horror soccer.
Yeah, that's a step in the right direction. I'm not sure how long or how often they're going to do it, but I was encouraged to see them at least make the effort. And I know, as we've talked before, when kids were growing up, major league ball players, anybody playing baseball, you played it from morning till night. That's what you did. You play it. And now you look out on the fields and they're empty. And the only time the fields are there when the kid has a practice or a game. And that's losing generations of future, ball players.
Yeah. But may I defend baseball in one way? Because I heard something the other day. The reason they went to more night games, they weren't thinking ahead enough to include the kids in this, but was so that the working guy could see more games.
Well, that goes back to Griffith, Right. He did that. He introduced it during World War II as a morale booster. He played a lot of night games, and it sort of caught on. And that was the premise on the subtitle of the book, how it changed the game forever.
And David, you're right about that. And the theory is that during World War II, an awful lot of workers, they were working in the factories, they were building war materials and all that kind of stuff. And so the deal was Major League Baseball, and Griffith sort of pioneered it. He didn't like it at first, but then it was pointed out to him, hey, he's going to put more people in the stands. And that's what they did, because the part of Roosevelt's green light letter, he talked about the morale.
Yeah.
For the good of the country, and because somebody, if they're in a shift or they're working 8 hours or 10 hours, repetitive building something, all of a sudden they can go and spend 2-3 hours at a ball game at night and really enjoy themselves.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the factory workers. There were all these military and civilian workers in the district who were working shift work around the clock on the war effort. So a lot of those guys were able to get to games. And they brought in ladies' night and things like that. But unintentionally perhaps, but part of it was the big money coming from the networks.
Well, I agree with that, and I've said this before, and I don't mean to keep dominating the conversations, but I mean, to me, and I said it the other day, I mean, it's become so money-driven. I mean, that's what it is. It's revenue. I mean, if they're going to take it based upon, hey, how many eyeballs are they going to have, and what's it going to cost for a commercial and all that kind of stuff, they put a day game on, and they're not going to get anywhere near that. So they go at night. That's what they do.
I know.
Well, I've mentioned this before. What really irks me is that a kid can't identify with the uniform of your favorite team. If you're in Arizona rooting for the Diamondbacks, there are 12 different uniform combinations that they wear, and I'm not exaggerating, between the pants and the shirts, and it's all to sell uniforms, and I don't think it helps the game. That's why I really respect the Yankees, and to a certain extent the Mets. They've kept it pretty with a few years there with the black and this, that, and the other thing. They've kept it pretty, the Mets are the Mets, the Yankees are the Yankees, Dodgers.
And the Red Sox, too. Red Sox,
Detroit, you got to get...
The Cubs, too.
Yeah. Yep. But, those like 5, 6, 7 teams do it. There are 30 teams anymore. So there are other teams that, the Phillies to a certain extent, have kept it classy. And as a matter of fact, I like their powder blue look that they had that they have these throwback uniforms for. So I don't dislike it all, but it gets enough is enough at times.
Well, for a long while, the individual teams controlled the uniform. Steinbrenner did not want Yankee shirts sold. He thought that was almost sacrilegious. The players could have them, but the fans couldn't have replica jerseys. And it was only it was only when MLB took over the marketing for all the teams that everybody. That's why nowadays, if you go into a sports store and you say, "I want a San Diego Padres shirt," they'll pull it off the rack. I mean, you don't have to go to San Diego.
And you know what they do, David? That's all part of the revenue stream.
Sure.
MLB has a licensing fee, and if
right.
you want to have an MLB license, and you can use their logo on whatever the merchandise is, hats, shirts, you name it.
Yeah.
That's what the revenue is coming into Major League Baseball for every one of those items that's sold.
That's right.
There's a licensing fee, and I happen to know the guy. He used to work for me. He's up at Major League Baseball. He's a vice president of licensing, and he told me, he said, "George," he said, we're making a lot of money because this licensing fee. If somebody wants to do it in a fan shop or they want to sell it in a sporting goods store, that manufacturer has to pay that licensing fee."
Yeah.
George, you're a producer of a podcast show. Get him. Get him on. That'd be an interesting guest.
Yeah, well, I'll have to call him because he's a guy I know. I talked to him about a year ago, so we'll see what I can find out.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Hey, thank you, guys. This is terrific.
Yep.
Okay, we'll speak to you next week. Yep.
Enjoyed it. Yep. We'll talk to you later.
Right. Stay healthy, all
Bye-bye.
of you. And thank you for listening, everyone. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We had David Hubler. We had George Case III. We had Hal Bock. And we had me, the weak link of it all, Ralph Tyko. Adios, everybody.
Yep. Bye-bye, everybody.
Night, everybody.